The moral of this story is never take a cup of tea from a group of teenagers. There's just one way to make him a hero again, the chief continued, giving no indication that he had heard Noboru. But I can't tell you what it is yet. The time will come, though, and soon. The others were forbidden to probe for the answer when the chief chose to speak in riddles. Effortlessly changing the subject, he focused the conversation on himself. Let me tell you about my vacation. On the trip we took, I was rubbing noses with my folks every day from morning to night for the first time in quite a while. Fathers, just think about it for a minute. They're enough to make you puke. Fathers are evil itself, laden with everything ugly in man. There is no such thing as a good father because the role itself is bad. Strict fathers, soft fathers, nice, moderate fathers, one's as bad as another. They stand in the way of our progress while they try to burden us with their inferiority complexes and their unrealized aspirations and their resentments and their ideals and the weaknesses they've never told anyone about and their sins and their sweeter than honey dreams and the maxims they've never had the courage to live by. They'd like to unload all that silly crap on us, all of it. Even the most neglectful fathers like mine are no different. Their consciences hurt them because they've never paid any attention to their children, and they want the kids to understand just how bad the pain is, to sympathize. On New Year's Day, we went to Arishiyama in Kyoto, and as we were crossing the Bridge of Moons, I asked my old man a question. Dad, is there any purpose in life? You see what I was getting at, don't you? What I really meant. Father, can you give me one single reason why you go on living? Wouldn't it be better just to fade away as quickly as possible? But a first-class insinuation never reaches a man like that. He just looks surprised. And his eyes bugged, and he stared at me. I hate that kind of ridiculous adult surprise. And when he finally answered, what do you think he said? Son, nobody is going to provide you with a purpose in life. You've got to make one for yourself. How's that for a stupid, hackneyed moral? He just pressed a button and out came one of the things fathers are supposed to say. And did you ever look at a father's eyes at a time like that? They're suspicious of anything creative, anxious to whittle the world down into something puny they can handle. A father is a reality-concealing machine, a machine for dishing up lies to kids, and that isn't even the worst of it. Secretly, he believes he represents reality. Fathers are the flies of this world. They hover around our heads waiting for a chance, and when they see something rotten, they buzz in and root in it. Filthy, lecherous flies broadcasting to the world that they've screwed with our mothers. And there's nothing they won't do to contaminate our freedom and our ability. Nothing they won't do to protect the filthy cities they've built for themselves. Fuck it, yeah, that'll do. I was going to do it again because I thought I fucked up a few times too many, but well, yeah, I'm human. What are you going to do? Yeah, hello, I'm GC mckay. Today I'm going to be talking about The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea by Yukio Mishima. First published in 1963, I believe. The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea. I finished this a few months back, and my initial kind of thoughts on it weren't really anything at all, if I'm honest. I mean, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good read, very well written as well. The prose is beautiful. But that was about it, to be honest. There were a few incidents in it, and I thought it was a well-paced and delivered piece. But I don't know, I just didn't really think too much of it. And funnily enough, and I think I've mentioned this before, when that happens, I've often found that given time, I will look back on it and I'll actually realise how good the piece truly was. And that is definitely the case with this piece, because since over the last few days, pondering whether to review it or not, I actually found myself at a bit of a conundrum, because I thought, well, where do I even begin with this? There's actually a hell of a lot to unpack, and I could make a review video much like I did for No Longer Human, where I really dive deep into it and try to analyse pretty much every section in it. And I could easily do the same with this piece. I mean, there's loads of themes going on throughout it, allegorical messages, struggles of the time. I suppose I'll try and give a brief summary of it and then highlight some of the said themes that I particularly enjoyed and that I think Mishima was particularly strong with in his writing career. So the story, or the main protagonist, is Noboru, a 13-year-old boy who lives with his mother, Fusako, and she's a widowed mother. So the father died, I think, about 5 years prior to the telling of the story. So they live alone, and she's like she works in kind of a fashion import-export business that is particularly bespoke and only really deals with Western imports and Western kind of ideals and clothing especially. And that's one of the themes that Mishima is concerned with primarily. But it's not just one of them. There's so many that I was just like, wow, where do I begin? And the sailor is, I'll try and say this correctly, but I'll probably fuck it up. Ryoji I can't remember the surname now. I'll try and get it up. But yeah. So Ryoji Tsukazaki, he's the main kind of sailor. And so one day when he's returning from a voyage, he actually meets the mother of the story and they begin a kind of romance. And at the beginning, the 13-year-old character, he is quite besotted with this guy because he lives up to the perceived ideal and future life that he wants to pursue. A life on the sea, independent, his own man, a real man's man kind of thing. And Mishima himself was very like this. He was a mad cunt, really, but kind of in a way that it's difficult not to admire. And from that kind of beginning, because it is kind of split into two parts, summer and winter, it's quite simple. And for a book that I will mention this now, that is under 200 pages, it's got so much in it that I'm actually highly impressed and surprised that I didn't realise how much I enjoyed it. The more I look back on it, I do remember the section like I just read when I first encountered the piece, and that comes up a few times. And I remember just finding that not only hilarious, but also just kind of weirdly mesmerizing at the same time. I was just like, kind of like, yeah, I remember being this age. And in some ways, it is a bit like Mishima has taken the kids at the end of Lord of the Flies and put them into post-war Japan that is struggling with their identity. And that is also heightened because within the gang, they're not even given names, they're given numbers. And Noboru is number 3. And the chief I can't remember what number he is, but he's just like, he's known as the chief kind of thing. And they're kind of like, they're railing against everything pretty much. And they're a little kind of band of nihilists who are obsessed with being independent again, but also kind of rejecting pretty much everything. They don't really want to conform. And I mentioned the Nietzschean Übermensch kind of ideal quite often on this channel, I've noticed, especially of late. But again, it's appropriate here because they do take this stance of like, they want to, you know, be supermen, especially as they grow up. And some of the incidents that take place and that they provoke are not only disturbing, but also highly intriguing. Some of the other themes, like I've just mentioned with the numbering of the characters, especially within the group, and this kind of groupthink mentality that is sprung from that, because they basically turn into little hooligans that are assuming this kind of heroic role because they're exercising their so-called freedom by usually inflicting innocent beings with violence and degradation and just quite vile things. But they see it as their true right kind of thing. And there is definitely a kind of overview of the author going on because he had his own issues with what was happening to Japan, idolizing the old Japan, the traditional and the very nationalistic and independent, as he perceived, country that he once was part of, that has been changing throughout, especially after World War II, and Western culture was really starting to come into Japan, and there was a lot of conflict going on, not only with the nation, but with quite a number of individuals within it. And Yukio Mishima was certainly not one to be quiet on that subject, because he even staged his own coup at one point in his life. So you can definitely see an overview and an influence from the author. And I read one review that viewed Noboru, the 13-year-old, in it as the kind of alter ego of Yukio Mishima. And I think I agree with that overall. But I also think that he comes out in every aspect. So keeping with the plot in a kind of abstract way, Noboru's a bit of a weirdo, I would say, overall. There's some slight indications of Oedipal complexes coming out in the piece, because he lives with his mother, as mentioned, and she sometimes locks him in his room. So like, she doesn't want him to get out. And as innocuous as that can seem at the beginning, it's also quite strange that she would lock her, teenage boy in his room. And inside his room, there is a little peephole that he takes advantage of. So he watches his mother quite often undressing and, trying on clothes. And what he sees, apart from her during the night, are all these kind of items from the West. So he sometimes looks at it and he doesn't recognize it, kind of thing. It's like it's estranged to him. And again, all of these themes blend so well. That's what I think Mishima is particularly strong at. I've read Confessions of a Mask as well, and I thought the prose in that and the poeticism within it is just, it's remarkable, I think. It's and it's also slightly deceiving in its perceived simplicity, because it really isn't. It's actually very detailed and very woven. And the sea itself in this is definitely used to expert degree, because they live in Yokohama, and that's right along the port, and they're kind of on the harbor. So quite often you'll hear boats, the sirens, and everything surrounding you. So it's got a lot of life going on within it. And again, the motion of the sea represents to Noboru the kind of life, essentially. It's like living free in the moment and just taking life by the horns, kind of thing. And that's what he idolizes. And this degree of masculinity, or hyper-masculinity, as Mishima was often associated with, is both enthralling as well as it is worrisome, I would say, and troublesome. It's just like, because the answer to a lot of this supposed masculinity, which I guess nowadays would be labeled toxic, is often to exercise your right to inflict violence quite often. And I think most of us can agree that there's a limit to how freeing that truly is. And is it not just barbarism given a kind of more fanciful name and idealism, which I certainly thought throughout. And I find it is still forgivable in some sense because they are teenagers and they're trying to find their way in the world, and they're living in a nation that has lost its identity. So I think they're trying to enforce it back, and that is obviously displayed through acts of violence. At some point in the novel, because after the sailor starts to live, because at the beginning Noboru really idolizes the man, but then because the guy has fallen from grace with the sea, essentially, because although he's lived this life that he really wanted to, and he's been to many countries and he's traveled and he's explored the world, he's beginning to become restless with it all, because he's in a plateau stage of not really feeling at ease with the sea any longer, but also not feeling comfortable on land either. So being stagnant is often viewed as something to fear. And that is a very masculine trait within itself. It's just like no one wants to feel like their life is not moving anymore. But ironically, the mother, who is well-to-do and successful, she's very stabilized in her existence, and she's quite clear on what she wants. And I actually think she represents a healthy masculinity in a lot of ways, because she's got the control that the men surrounding her really idolize. And she's also got a grace about her that accepts change and embraces the future that she foresees. And although she does do this by basically turning her back on traditional values, I actually think that's far more admirable and something to be looked at as courageous, ironically, because she doesn't look back on and feel sorry for herself. Whereas I think a lot of the men, especially the boys and the sailor, they worship a world that no longer exists, and they want to enforce it back into existence, when really they should probably be looking to let that go. But again, these are all the themes, and I don't think Mishima makes any profound judgments. I think it's an exploration for him himself throughout the piece quite a lot. And, I think every writer projects part of their own personalities into their characters. So I could definitely see the alter ego being true of all of them involved. There are some moments in it that will probably get under your skin, I would say. Quite shocking. But for me, I'm so used to not only writing but reading this kind of stuff. It doesn't. I just read it. I don't really go, ooh, like, unless it's particularly written in a certain way where it's designed to get under you and it shocks you, kind of thing. You don't expect it. Like with Michelle Houellebecq's Serotonin, there's a moment towards the latter that I was quite stunned, because it kind of came out of nowhere. Or at least I saw it that way, and I was led to question his character a lot. Whereas with this, because it is so poetically written, I actually just took everything as it came. And I think that was partly why I didn't realise just how convoluted, in a good way, the novel is, especially for one so short. Basically, what the kids end up doing is mutilating a kitten just to show that they can kill, really. The comparisons to Lord of the Flies are quite easy to make, I would say, but I do think that they're far more advanced. And as mentioned, it's like he took them from the end of that novel and made them like a year, 2, 3 older, and then this is what they've become, kind of thing. So they're just railing against everything. My one kind of criticism, I suppose, is that their worldview and language capabilities are pretty advanced for kids. And I do think that perhaps around that time, and especially in Japan, where there is a lot of societal pressure on kids to be intellectual and to, consider their careers from a pretty damn fucking young age, it's believable enough. But there are times where I just think, how can they be so philosophical, especially in this kind of like Nietzschean capacity, where they're just like, I don't know, it's like they've got their eye on things that you wouldn't really suspect them having any clue about at times. But again, this is a philosophical novel, so I actually think it is passable. I think it's fine. I think as well that, at that time, perhaps they probably got hold of a few texts, and then from that they formed this supposed ideology. But a lot of times there's no logic to what the chief starts railing on about. I mean, I found the father's rants to be particularly hilarious, just because they were so deluded and so bizarrely critical, because it was like no father could win, kind of thing. It didn't matter what type of father they were. It was just like, if you become a father or a breeder, you've committed the ultimate sin, kind of thing. And especially if you actually look to worship that, or to at least become a decent father. Whereas, and it's quite sad, because Ryoji, the sailor, he wants to be quite a decent father to Noboru, and there's a moment in it where he could discipline him quite severely, mainly because of the peephole that I mentioned earlier. But he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to inflict pain upon a defenseless child, which is quite, again, ironic because of what Noboru is getting up to with his gang of nihilists in the background. So this kind of, this basically shifts the narrative, and it kind of goes from what you could perceive as a kind of romance in a way. I mean, the relationship that blossoms, and there's this kind of really poetic language going on. Ryoji is often described with the color of gold, and obviously with it being summer, like everything's kind of on the up and up, everything's growing, everything's in bloom. But then as winter hits, and Ryoji returns from another voyage, he's in love with Fusako, and they're planning on getting married and all this. And Noboru informs the gang about these goings on, and they view it as the ultimate betrayal to the ideal that they behold, kind of thing. And yeah, what that leads to, I won't spoil this part, but yeah, I made a brief kind of nod to it at the beginning of this video. And overall, it's got themes of honor, loyalty, but I suppose it's more to do with glory. I think that's what it. And Mishima himself was definitely obsessed with this. I mean, he actually said that once he finished his the Sea of Fertility kind of, I think it's a trilogy, but it might be a couple more. I can't remember. It's like a group of books that he worked on. Once he was completed with that, he was going to perform seppuku, which is suicide, and he did. Like any good Japanese writer, or any writer, in of itself. But yeah, there's definitely these themes throughout. And he actually was raised in a kind of samurai family, so he had a lot of these traditional values instilled within him. And a lot of them I can see a benefit of, and a lot of them, yeah, they seem a bit archaic. And there is that archetypal element to some of the characters within the piece as well. But what I think Mishima does so well is he gives them a life and paradoxes that not only complement but create the conflict that's going on throughout. So we've got the conflict between sea and land, then we've got it between the perceived ideal life and the actual reality. Then it's, there's loads of things going on within it. That's what makes it so impressive. So you got glory as one of the themes, then you've got alienation, which is a big one, because Noboru obviously doesn't relate to anyone around him. He's fatherless at the beginning, and well, he remains so because he rejects Ryoji. Ryoji, the sailor himself, has fallen out with his lifestyle and his what he thought he wanted from life. And although he has his own personal history of not taking to land and having reasons for leaving it, he's also now at a point in his life, because he's growing up basically, or he wants to settle down really, and he finds Fusako, and she's the only one in it who actually has any balance. And as I made reference to earlier, I think she's the character who, without her in it, it would be far weaker, and it wouldn't have the legs. There's nothing keeping it stable. And there are some that say that, or some theories suggest that women view stability as the ideal. That's because there's more control in it. And really, the way she lives her life, I actually think is the far more admirable of all of them. But I can also see the allure of the unknown, I suppose. It's like, because that's what they're kind of idolizing quite a lot, is just this notion of total liberation, and the liberation to do things that really are just destructive for destruction's sake, quite a lot of it. And that's where their ideology falls flat, especially the little group of nihilist thugs who just basically want to fuck up the world because they hate everything in it and they haven't grown up and all this kind of stuff. But the things they do are pretty shocking, as opposed to the average reader. And it is unsettling in a lot of ways. But I actually found the fact that Noboru was spying on his mother at night, and he watches, the sailor fuck her. There's a moment where one of the sirens of the boat goes off whilst he's watching it, and because his head kind of flicks and he registers it, he thinks that the sailor is still on board, kind of thing. He's still on the right track, because he's like, his priorities haven't been shifted yet, kind of thing. So there's also kind of there is a humor going on in it, but it's subtle. And really, I just think the whole thing has a way of kind of getting into you, kind of like when you do listen to The Ocean. It just has this manner where it kind of calms you. And I think that was Mishima's best quality overall. One of the other themes, I suppose, would be dehumanization, again with the labeling of the numbers in the group. There's definitely an identity crisis going on, and that can be extended to post-war Japan and the influence from the West, and how the citizens felt about that, and the fall of traditional values and all of this kind of stuff. So there's loads to unpick. I really could go on actually, and I think with rereads I would come up with different theories and things like that. So it's definitely got a lot going for it, an ambiguity and an effervescence, I think, that is just quality. Definitely recommend it. It's a great read, and it's deceptively good, I would say, as well. Like, I think that might be a rule of really great literature in some ways, where because it's so easy to digest, it means it was written with, a passion and an ardent fervor that created that because it was so combed through and really, heightened to such an extent, and it just has a flow about it that I just think is beautiful. I mean, to end this video, I would say that Mishima himself was a character who is very interesting, but he, as much as he was kind of obsessed with, masculine strength and nationalistic kind of preservation, he also had a real femininity about him. I'm pretty sure he was homosexual, but I don't think that has any relevance. I think it's more to do with, he was in touch with his feminine side as much as his masculine. And he had a an eye for beauty, I think, and elegance. And that all comes out in this novel through the singular female character, really. I mean, there's a couple, I think there's an actress in it, but that's, not too relevant. But there's also mentioning that, yeah, there's also a kind of mirroring going on with the whole peephole thing. Like, there's potentially a bit of narcissism going on with the mother, maybe, or yeah, I would say so, because she gets this piece of advice from this kind of famous actress, and she just kind of takes it, and she doesn't really have any moral conundrum with it. And really, you'd think it was a bit suspicious that she would just go along with that, and I'm not sure how the sailor of the story would feel about it. But yeah, I mean, I suppose that also leaves up the ending. I would say what's going to happen, and it's pretty grim, and it's ironic, and it is foreshadowed as well, essentially. So I just think everything in it's just great. Really good fucking piece. I preferred it to Confessions of a Mask, if I'm honest. I think the plot is stronger. But yeah, maybe with time I might change my mind. I don't know. But yeah, I've been waffling on a bit now, so I'm going to go. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.